reinforce what has back in the old days when Alex and Tony and I and Dale were cutting our teeth in sales. We were the internet, right? The sales professionals were the carriers of information. When a customer or prospect was interested in a product, solution, a service, they would find other companies that provided that. And the sales folks would meet with them, and those sales professionals would educate them on, of course, their product, what's going on in the industry, what the trends are, ask them, you know, what their situation is to kind of customize that solution to their needs. So we were actually in the front end of that whole sales process. And what has happened today is that our customers are actually getting involved and getting the salespeople involved at the tail end. So it's gotten harder for us. It's gotten harder to be successful in sales. All right, so just to kind of throw out the gauntlet here, you know, some of the other things that are happening and have happened and should be part of your quiver, if you will, for a just solid sales prospecting process is things like mapping the buyer journey. The other key thing is really integrating sales with marketing, because they've become even more integral and valuable to each other. The other, you know, multimedia prospecting cadences. We'll talk a little bit about that. Chat bots. I don't know, folks, you know, you have, each of your companies probably has a website. I'm just curious, how many of the folks here, their companies actually have a chat bot? Just raise your hand. Okay, one. All right, very good. That, if you think about it, how are buyers getting information today? Well, they're going to the internet, right? And they eventually, hopefully, find your site and they click on it and they're poking around. You don't know what they're actually looking for. You haven't talked with them yet. And if they have a question or they're looking for something specific, well, what could they do? Well, they could pick up the phone and call you. Not happening, right? Or they could go onto another website, which is usually what happens. The third option with a chatbot, for example, is that they can simply ask a question. Hey, do you provide this service, or does your product include this particular specification? You got them. It's point of sale. It's real time. And just to throw out some more stats, and Alex is right, I am a data guy. The Accenture, which is a big consulting firm, I'm sure many of you folks are familiar or aware of this company, did a study, and they looked at 1,500 B2B companies and the decision makers in those companies. And these were big companies, small companies, multi-industry. So it was a fair representation of the B2B market in general. And they asked these decision makers a question about how would they prefer to communicate with their colleagues, their customers, their prospects, and their suppliers after COVID, when we don't have to worry about getting together. And the options were, of course, face-to-face, email, phone, digitally, vis-a-vis like a chat bot or you know, text messaging, or video conference, right? Interestingly enough, in this study, 89% of those people who took that study said video conference, right? Not face-to-face. That was their default. They would prefer that. Not to say that we will never have face-to-face meetings again, because we will, but they're going to be fewer of those versus kind of these digital interactions that we're having right now. So when you look at all the different tools out there, it gets a little overwhelming. You know, automated, integrated meeting schedulers, you know, video, email, which is actually another really interesting and valuable tool for prospecting. The fact is, it's just a really busy space when it comes to sales tech and all the options you have. It can be a bit overwhelming. So I like to just keep it simple, right? Go to the fundamentals. How do we simply improve the contact rate and appointments from our list of prospects? What can we do to maximize that effort, knowing that our customers, our prospects, are using different media? They're not necessarily expecting or requiring a face-to-face meeting. Again, the dynamics have changed. So if we pivot to how they are wanting to communicate, we're going to be able to communicate more often, right? And I'm sure Sales Evolution would not disagree with this fundamental fact. Sales is all about one thing. It's about the number of at-bats. The more often we can get in front of prospects and customers that have problems that we have a unique way of solving or differentiated way of solving, the more sales we're going to make. It's that simple. Now, the science, I suppose, the craft, a bit of the art is all about quality at bats. We want quality at bats. So if we can increase the number of quality at bats on the front end with the prospecting, well, that's just going to give you more of a qualified pipeline to work down to an actual sale. Okay, so just a little bit more about to be successful, you know, to successfully compete and win these days, yeah, you need a sales process, right? You need good sales tools. You know, if I told you that this company, you know, at my company, we don't use those goofy computer things. We use an abacus. We've been using it for centuries. It works great. Well, you know, you're a bit behind the curve if that's your attitude and approach to it. So like any profession, there's different tools, and we need to be using the right tools. And of course, this is really what it's all about. And this is what Sales Evolution is really reinforcing. It's about skills, right? And in the end, and this came from the Alexander Group, which is a well-known kind of consulting company in our sales world. And they said education and upskilling reps in digital tools have become a mission-critical task with the acceleration of digital working in the past 5 months. And market leaders have allocated time to get it right. So again, I commend you because you, unlike many of your competitors, are actually taking the time and the commitment to improve your skills and to be successful in this newer environment. So let's talk about prospecting, all right? And we're going to get specifically into what is referred to as a sequence. You know, it's just a pattern. It's just a pre-planned steps of prospecting. And let's see. Yeah. So I'll give you a good example. Here is a prospecting sequence, prospecting cadence, if you will. And you'll notice that the first thing is done is an email is sent out. Then it's a LinkedIn touch, right? And now they have this example, they happen to use Zoho CRM, but it doesn't really matter which CRM you use. And then there was another email. There was a phone call, email, phone call. And then finally, if no traction occurred, then you cut bait and move on. And this was, in this case, was an automated process that we did tie into their CRM. And we helped write the email templates that could be personalized. So it would say, you know, hi, Stephen, not, you know, dear sir, and could include other variable information. So, and it came from your specific email. So it had all of the typical branding you would have. And it came directly to that prospect. So it looks, smells, sounds like an email that came directly to somebody. And then the sales folks would then touch that particular prospect on LinkedIn just to say, hey, I'm here. And by the way, we don't want to sell on LinkedIn. That's not a platform for selling. It's a platform just to develop relationships and get introduced to people. It's a networking platform, so don't try to sell anything on LinkedIn. And over the course of 90 days for this particular client, they had 3 new sales folks that they hired, and they had some sales experience, but they not a lot. And over the course of those 90 days, they were able to secure $4.1 million in net new revenue for this particular client. And it was a $12 million company, so that was pretty significant. And none of it was rocket science. It was just consistent. It was measurable. And within the CRM, we had it linked to activity. And for the first 90 days, each of the new sales folks knew exactly what their goals were for every day of that first 90 days. And we would talk about their success, their challenges on a weekly basis. And then eventually it was not just prospecting, it was getting a specific number of meetings. And then based on those meetings, a specific number of qualified opportunities and proposals, and eventually sales, right? So it just walked them through the whole sales process using this prospecting cadence.
Hey, Mark.
Yes, sir.
I might be jumping the gun, but the email template with the video, is the video kind of like a pre-programmed video about the company, or is it a video of the sales rep saying, hey, I'm Tony Knack from Sales Evolution. I'm trying to get in touch with you, blah, blah, blah. Like one of those short introductory videos. Which one do you typically choose on this kind of an outbound reach?
I'd love both, but the easy and most practical thing is a video that was made by the company, and it's just attached to the email and the CRM. It's like any other attachment, right? And it talks about the company or the product or the solution, whatever the case may be. And it's brief, but video in itself, again, human beings, when we communicate, the actual words that I'm saying only represent about 20% of what each of you is processing. The other 80% is my eye contact, facial gestures, body language, tone. That's the real communication that's hardwired. We don't even think about it, but the decision about somebody's, from our perspective, credibility, likability, trustability happens in less than a second. That's just how we're wired. And we're not even aware of it. So the point is video, and this is a perfect example, is touches on more of the, fundamental human communication points, right? So if you can have video in there, it's just going to help to improve your effectiveness.
And then,
by the way, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The mechanics, just, people are afraid to hit a link in a video, so you're going to have some people that don't hit it. What was your thought process around that? Do you, you said attach the video right into the email, right? Yeah. So if you're doing that, did you have challenges as you send these out with the overall size of the file and people not getting it because video, it's got to be really short or it's going to eat up a ton of
That's right. That's right. Well, yeah. And I should qualify that. There was a link, right? So it wasn't actually a hard file right in the email. There's a graphic picture, and then you click on it, and it sent you to the website, where a landing page sort of thing, or just to YouTube, wherever you had it published. But again, just using video. And one of the other things that you had mentioned was having video in your prospecting cadence where they're actually seeing you personally. And I use a tool called Vidyard, Vidyard, and there's plenty of tools out there. And the fact is that I can just hit a button on my browser, and it starts recording, and I just start flapping my gums, and then I press stop, and it turns it into a GIF file, GIF file, which doesn't get caught up in spam. So that's one of the benefits, right? So those are pretty effective. And just from a prospecting perspective, if the word video, just the word video is in your subject line, of course, it's not the only word, but, you know, hey, David, I created this video about your business. You know, if there's that video in there, the open rate increases by about 20%, right? Well, 20%, okay, whoa, that's not what's a big deal there. 20% is huge, right? I mean, you know, if you send out 10, that's 2 more opens in effect, right? If you send out 100, that's 20. So it's very effective. It's very effective. So let me just move here. Are we all right on time, Alex? Because I'll just go on and on. We're good? Okay,
You're good to go. You're good to go.
All right. I wish my buddy Kyle was on this call, because I would ask him this question directly. But I'm going to ask the group. What is the singular goal of sales prospecting? When you're prospecting, what is the only goal? Bit of a loaded question. Anyone take a guess?
I'd say qualifying has to do with some of it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's to get the meeting. That's it. That's it. You know, so often, and I'm sure Alex and Tony and the Sales Evolution team will, you know, talk to you folks about this. You know, if you're doing prospecting, the goal is to get a commitment to have a deeper discussion. And to your point, Jack, to qualify. Is this a good fit? Does this make sense for you? Does it make sense for me? You know, just to see if there's a good reason to continue a conversation. When you're prospecting, that is it. Your goal is to get a meeting, not to sell, you know, not to promote your products necessarily. Just get a commitment to have a discussion about their situation and how you may be able to help them. So here's some other stats for you on prospecting. You got 2.7 seconds to get their attention, right? So you better practice. Personalizing, meaning, you know, putting their name in, you can either put the name in the subject line, or obviously if you use a prospecting cadence, the CRMs, all of them, you can set up a field where it automatically puts someone's first name in there. So it's personalized, but personalizing is much more effective than not. Yeah, and the most effective outbound, meaning this is cold prospecting to you know, a vetted list, by the way. You know, we have a good list of the ideal customer profiles, right? And the appropriate personas that we're going after with the right titles, the right kind of companies, that sort of thing. But it's about 6 to 7 touches. And what I'll show you in a minute or so is that most sales folks are done by 3. Like, never got it. Didn't hear anything back from them. I'm moving on. Well, you should stick with it. All right. Yeah, I'm not sure that, you know, 80% of the top 100 cadences started with a phone call. That depends on what you're actually selling. If it's more strategic sale, more complex sale that, you know, takes longer, multiple meetings, it's probably email, phone call. It's not that important, really. But that's specifically referring to some things that might be a little more transactional, where it could be a one call kind of close, but typically it's going to take 1 or 2 meetings to kind of get the business. And this is what I wanted to share. I don't know how old this thing is, but I think Alex saw this too. I think all of us sales geeks have seen this, but they're still true, right? 48% salespeople never follow up with a prospect, right? 25 make a second contact and stop, right? So, I mean, if you make that third call, you're already beating your competition. That's the other thing too, right? I mean, you can see it here. 2% of sales are made on the first contact, right? So, depending, you know, it depends on what you're selling. Obviously, it's possible, but for most professional kind of sales processes for B2B type business, 80% of sales are made on the 5th and 12th contact, right? So it is a numbers game. It is a numbers game, but if it's a professional numbers game, it is effective. And it's just like, Alex, that was a great analogy about going to the gym, right? These are tools we have. These are equipment we use, and we just use them appropriately on a consistent basis over time, we're going to get greater results. It's not that.
The one thing I wanted to add to that is people have already done this before because each one of you has job searched. So if each one of you job search, you're basically prospecting. So you've done it before for your own job. So that's one of the things about the time management in this whole prospecting as well, is how do you use the gym and how to use your time for job searching. Everybody by default goes to Indeed, and they didn't realize that they needed to network to get the job. So how are you prospecting is the key of how are you using the gym and effectively in this prospecting cadence. We got a question here from Dominic, if you don't mind, I'll ask it. Does the amount of time between touches make a difference, 3 days apart versus 2 months apart? Good question.
Yes, Dominic, and I'm going to answer that question specifically now. Well, maybe now. Let's see. Let me just point out to you, Dominic, that there are basically 5 components of a prospecting cadence, right? You have the number of attempts, media, email, phone, LinkedIn, video, duration, which is from start to end. And then what you're talking about, Dominic, is spacing, between, all right, I made the first call. When should I make the second call or email? And I'll get into that. And of course, the content, right? What is in these communications? So let's first start with the attempts. So we'll work our way through this. And by the way, I don't want to come across that this is complicated and it's going to require, a huge amount of time. One, it's not. If it's planned, and there's plenty of templates, you won't be the first person to prospect. So, you can find these things out there. And 2, it's prospecting. I'm sure Sales Evolution talks about this. It's just part of your job, right? So if you're an accountant, at the end of the month or wherever, or twice a month, you have to do payroll, right? It's like part of your job. So, okay, here's how I do payroll. I do it. I started on this date. I start getting the books together. I start contacting the bank, and and I go through all those things, and payroll's done, and then I move on to other things. Prospecting is the same thing. It's part of our job. So what a lot of very successful folks do is carve out 1 hour a day, depending on where you are. If you want. It's simple, the more time you commit to it, the greater, value their pipeline's going to be. But let's say that things are moving along, you have some good quality pipeline opportunities. If you just do it 1 hour a day and commit to it as if it were another meeting, another important meeting, just keep it going, right? It's really not that complicated once you have, a good system down. And just do it. So let's see here. Yeah, so I kind of went through what those different things are. All right, so let's talk about the structure, right? It's typically you want to have at least 6 or 7 touches, and I got some of this data from a couple different sources, but the fact is that around the 6th touch, you'll have gotten most of your responses, right? After between 6 and 7, the response rate just dives down. So it's like at that point, you should move on, right? Because if it's a good list, you're going to use it as a list, and you're going to shoot it out to a group of those folks and start the cadence going. And after the 6th one, you pretty much should move on. And by the way, because of what's happened in our economy and the way people work these days, the number of touches has actually increased to that 6 and 7 number. And the reason is simple. All of us all of us, if you looked at from last year, actually 2019 to now, we are on the average, each of us receiving about 50% more emails than we did in the past. I don't know about you guys, but I'm just getting inundated with more and more emails. So the fact is there's just more traffic, right? And you, like Jack, has a valuable product or service and say, hey, wait a minute, I have a good list. You probably would benefit from what my company has to offer. And I'd just like to talk to you about it, right? And so trying to get through that pile that's on top of your prospect's email is tougher, right? So that's why you'll see, kind of changing up how you communicate is really important. So that's a good thing, media. So we're talking about phone, email, voicemail, social media, video. Believe it or not, depending on what you do, direct mail, personalized direct mail has become actually more effective. And, I don't know. Now, I know I'm old school, but I'm going to show you something. What I was going to show is I have note cards. I send it to people occasionally, like a handwritten note with a stamp on the envelope, right? Not for everybody, but when's the last time you got, maybe at your birthday or Christmas, those things stand out. So direct mail. But the fact is, if you just use one communication method, like just email, your success rate is going to be approximately 9.5% as far as converting that list to an actual interaction. Doesn't mean sale, just means that you actually have success in speaking with them and having a qualification call. If you add two methods, phone and email, that rate goes up to about 23%. And if you have three, it goes up to 25%. So the point is, the more ways that you're trying to get in front of, say hi to, get your name in front of your prospect in this process, the greater success you'll have. So here's the duration. Again, it depends on what you're selling and the sales cycle time for your product or service. Obviously, if it's a kind of shorter sales cycle time, your duration from first email, for example, to last attempt would be shorter, 12 days. But if it's a little longer, if it's a longer term, more complex, then it's just going to get elongated, right? So to answer your question, Dominique, spacing, right? Again, it depends, but just, it usually is about 2 days. Again, you can spread that out a little bit, depending on what you're actually selling. And you can see here, it's like after a prospect engages with an email by opening up or clicking on it, link, the time it takes, that's just another point about leads. But the fact is that if someone does respond to an email or voicemail or a link, or even the chat bot is a better example. But we have the ideal response time, 5 minutes, 5 to get back to them. So if someone responds to you or says, hey, oh yeah, I did have a question or whatever in your emails that you're sending them, jump on that ASAP. Why? Well, they're sitting at their computer, like we all do all day, their laptop. There's something going on, right? You did a nice job of getting a good list of the ideal customer profile, the right kind of job titles, that you're trying to contact. They click on an email you sent. Like, oh, you know what? As a matter of fact, yeah, that is a bit of an issue. It's a problem right now. I'm interested. And, if they're anything like me, who has an attention span of a gnat, I want a response now, right? I'm interested now. In 5, 10, 15 minutes, I'm off to another meeting, or there's a different phone call, or, you know, I'm still interested. But if you can get to them like right away, that is ideal, right, when you're prospecting. Yeah, once, in fact, you know, if you can't get to them within 24 hours, it's almost like you just wasted your time and their time. You can't let leads like that fester. They're like fresh fruit, you know, each moment they just decrease in value and taste and quality. All right, so content. Here's some, and again, I'll send this, PDF of this, but it's good best practices, whether you're prospecting or not. But, emails, typical emails about 362 words. Make it less than 300. Less is more. Less is more. Voicemail, less than 30 seconds, right? By the way, often folks will say, hey, people don't answer my phone calls when I call, and you're right. In fact, I'm a data guy, Alex. 88% of folks who receive, like I'm pointing to my phone, my mobile phone on my desk here, if it started to ring, there's about a 12% chance I'm going to pick that phone up, right? Even if it's somebody I know. So the fact is, and the assumption is, you're going to leave a voicemail, right? So if I'm not going to talk to them, why should I, leave a voicemail? Well, think about it. In a prospecting cadence, you probably send them an email. You may have introduced yourself to them on LinkedIn. All right. So there's Stephen, Engel. Stephen Engel sent me an email. Oh, this guy Stephen left me a voicemail. All right, Stephen. It's that repetition. Even though it's just the very inkling kind of first pieces of a relationship, it's still a relationship. They hear your voice. He seems like a decent person, right? He's not overbearing, Yeah, it's a sales call, but it's not, over the top. So voicemails are part of it. And just another quick little tip. I'm sure Sales Evolution gets on this. Keep them, yes, less than 60 seconds. And tell them what you want. And when you do leave your phone number, repeat it at the end twice, because we've all been in situations where we're just running around, we hear it like, yeah, I got to call this person back. You can't find a pen, or just repeat it. Yeah, I mean, usually if it's a mobile phone, you can just return it, but nonetheless, it's good practice. All right, here's another good one. Now, I have to admit, I'm not sure this is deadly accurate like today, but throughout 2020 it was, right? Like, what's the best day to call? Optimal time to call. Optimal number of calls, okay. How fast did you respond? I mentioned that before, 5 minutes, right? They call you back, jump on it. All right, so emails. We talked about how long they should be, but what is a good, effective prospecting email? Keep the subject line short, right? And I mentioned before, if you happen to have a video, in the email, or send a personalized email, if you can mention video, that's going to help. But the other thing too, if this kind of sales prospecting cadence is connected to some other tool, and you can start to see some stats, and I'll show you some of my own personal experience with it. You can play around with the subject line, because subject lines are so critical, right? Because that's the first thing you see. I mean, all of us do it. We're looking at our long list of emails. We're kind of triaging which ones we kill and which ones we might open, So, and don't make them salesy either. Yeah, personalize it, body, make it brief, but don't be generic. Call to action, that's the key thing. Like, okay, All right, you sent me an email. All right, I'm reading it. I don't really care about who you are yet, right? So, you know, you don't need to tell me what your name is because I can see it in your, at the bottom there. It says Mark Kesty, right? So you don't have to tell me that. So again, just there's some good, just best practices for these things. All right, so here's a live example.
Mark, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So we're bringing up kind of a live moment here, which it could be an opinion, it could be data, it could be facts, but I think it's good to understand this. There's a lot of calendar sharing for call to action. So the calendar sharing is, hey, you know, let's set up a time, blah, and this. How do you do a generation view? You know, there's one generation that looks at it like, hey, this is the tools we're using. And then there's a little gray hair generation is, what is this all about?
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, I think the fundamental piece is to make it as easy as humanly, technologically possible to get the meeting, right? Make it easy. And I will say that, you know, I'm an older guy, I'm 58. So I was hesitant to send like a Calendly link.
Yeah.
Because I felt like, who am I to ask the person I'm asking to meet with to schedule the meeting around my schedule, right? I don't know, but I started using it, and I can only speak for Calendly. There's plenty of other tools out there, but Calendly, you can, it's just click on your browser, boom, it drops down. It's already coordinated with your calendar that you have. And you can select like 3 days, and then it automatically gives the times within those 3 days. So for the folks who, you know, aren't technically savvy, it literally lists Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you know, 8 a.m., 3 p.m., whatever. It gives them like 9 different options, right? And they just click the button. So to me, that's a way for someone who's not necessarily, you know, technically savvy, just, okay, here, it would be no different if I listed them myself, you know, they just click the button. So that's how I approach that.
Okay.
That's how I approach that. But the overarching point is just make it easy for folks to set up a meeting with you, right? I mean, just make it as easy as possible. Reduce that friction. Okay, so this is a quick example. I use this now. In this case, I was only doing emails, so I wasn't expecting huge returns. And this was kind of on the side kind of project that I was doing. And one, as far as technology, we use this tool, I should say, my marketing guy and I, called reply.io. And it's like $12 a month. And basically, you can create your email templates, right, in it. And so you don't necessarily have to have a CRM. It's a nice, you can connect it to it, but you don't have to. So it's a nice tool. I also, from actually getting leads, I used UpLead, which is a lead source tool, but I think most of you already have your list of kind of ideal customer profiles and personas, contact kind of list. And this is, you know, one of the emails that was kind of included, and you can see, you know, oops, don't want to go there. So it's personalized. And so here's kind of the example in this reply.io. You can see here that you insert the person's name, you know, it's kind of automated. And in this case, yeah, I did include a video in some of the emails. And then it, you know, showed us what the results were. So this was just pure outbound email prospecting using a personalized professional cadence. And so we sent out over the course of a couple months, like 4,800 emails. Keep in mind that it wasn't 4,800 prospects, right? It was just 4,800 emails because we had lists, I'm trying to remember, I think we would go after, 100 at a time or 150 at a time. And each one of those would have 5, actually 6 different emails they would get, different emails. And then out of those, we got 1,000 opens, 47 replies. When it's all said and done, we got 20 customers, basically. So that was just using an automated prospecting cadence, in this case, using a tool to automate it, tracking it, using a little video also. And, so that's the beauty of technology too, is while I'm doing other things, maybe supporting my clients, in the background, there's technology just going and find new customers, right? That's a beautiful thing. And so this is the last piece. I know I've gone over. So just kind of a best practice. If you have the, start with 50, add them. If you have a CRM, add a CRM. If you don't, use something like that reply.io and, press the button, start, and then convert those leads. And if there's no response, after the 6th or 7th touch, move on. Keep those in your, if you have a drip list, if you send out, monthly newsletters or something like that, put them on that. So I went over, I'm sorry, Alex and Tony and Dale, but.
You're good, Mark. Thank you so much for this really good overview on this. And I want people to take advantage of a couple minutes that we have left. What questions do people have? And I think we appreciate all our students in just, being open of either your challenges or something that's on your mind about how you prospect. While Mark is here, what question do you have for him about any of this? Either the phone call, the email, or any of that?
Alex, this is Justin. I have a quick question. Mark, when with using reply.io, which I hadn't heard of, but it sounds like it would be very helpful to me, and you have, the 6 or 7 emails in your cadence, do you take the time to write those and I guess make them each one a little bit different, or does the platform help you with that?
Well, each one of the emails in the cadence is different, but the first one that each person gets is the same. Now, the way that each one is unique, however, is that it allows, if you have your list, your email list that you're going to use, it kind of imports that. So if I'm going to, if you're on that list, Justin, Stephen, Jack, Robert, Maria, Dale, Alex, David, and Tony are all on my prospecting list. I have their emails, first names, last names, and such. The system will automatically, when it sends an email to Tony, it'll say, "Hi, Tony," right? And it's the same content. When it's, "Hi, Justin," "Hi, Quinn." So it customizes it that way. And you can also put in the fields, the company name, of that prospect. There's other variable stuff that you can add in there if they're part of the contact information you have, right? So does that answer your question?
Well, I really mean, like, if you're going to send them 6 or 7 emails over a course of time, each of those to one prospect,
yes,
each of those emails is a little bit different, correct?
Absolutely. They're a little different. Absolutely. They are different. It's not the same email. For example, the second email, it's actually kind of intuitive. It's just, "Hey, just making sure you got my first email." Right.
Yeah.
And
I guess
and
when you get to the 5th one, how is it different than the 4th, or how is the 6th different from the 5th?
yes, yeah. Well, you'd want to, try to articulate the very briefly, like any sales kind of situation, try to resonate with some of the pain that you could solve. So another email could include like a testimonial from another customer, right? Another email could include some results, you know, that you're able to share of how it solved the problem. You could also, you know, depending on your industry, there may be an interesting, valuable kind of white paper or article. Say, hey, you know, Justin, I saw this article about so-and-so. I thought you'd be interested in it, you know. I mean, again, it's just, you're just trying to establish credibility and a relationship and some value add to that prospect, right?
And if I can chime in, that's part of what Mark does for our customers, right? So he's got a playbook, and part of that playbook is based on who you are, what you're selling, and what the target is Mark's helping determine how many emails are we sending, what delivery method, how often, and what do they say. That's part of the overall solution for prospecting that Mark helps our customers with.
Yeah, thanks, Tony.
And Tony, just to, sorry, if you
Go
want
ahead,
me to,
please,
if you
Jack.
don't mind me jumping in.
Not at
We
all.
spend a good amount of time on this stuff too at Asset Map. And one of the things to keep in mind is to think about telling a story and not throwing everything into one email all at once.
Yeah.
And to really try and break it up. And again, you're sending this out to prospects that you've probably never spoke to about, maybe totally random, but to try and think up a story that you're trying to tell. And that way it'll also help you break that up effectively if you just keep that in mind. I know it's easier said than done over a Zoom meeting webinar. But anyways.
That's great stuff. You're spot on, Jack. And yeah, the front end work is work, and you got to think it through. But once you get it done, and you know, start with step one, it's just this machine starts going, and makes your life a lot easier and more productive.
Yeah, I wanted to add that you know, each organization is going to be different. So the larger companies with sales managers and VP of sales, large ones, they're typically going to be responsible for formulating this whole plan for the sales reps. So when a sales rep is hired, they usually see it when they get in. They usually see something through the sales playbook. They usually see something there. When you're with smaller companies, and some of you may be seeing it, or a new entrepreneurship, growing young company, there's usually maybe nothing in place. So you have to be kind of on your own to create your own cadence. If you are the sales, if there's 3 people as salesperson for an organization and just the CEO. So that is going to be the difference of how you see this. Is you may see it where it exists, or you may see it where you need to develop it yourself in your own way, and either through the CRM or through that. So we've seen that on our end as well. So, you know, any other questions for Mark?
Yeah, quick question about the email addresses, Mark, because for the people that haven't done this before and haven't been around, you know, selling as long as you and I have, where they've got all these sales managers in the CRM somewhere, right? Where do you buy the email addresses? Because they're not all public unless you're selling to school districts where everybody's email address is on a website somewhere and you can grab it. I had a customer that was like that. It was very easy for them to accumulate them. So in your tools, does one of those provide a price per email address based on your criteria?
Yeah. And just let me also just say that, you know, I'm responsible for my taco stand. That's what I call my business, right? It's just me. It's just me. So I don't have this army of, you know, support and kind of pre-existing processes. And hey, there's nothing wrong, and it will work if you just write a handful of emails, right? And you simply copy and paste those emails to who you're reaching out to. Yeah, it's going to take more time if you don't have the tools. And, you know, follow up with phone calls to those folks. You know, you can create your own. It doesn't have to use all this great technology. But once you have those kind of emails established, yeah, just bang them out, you know, bang them out. But to answer your question, Tony, there's so many different, I guess, sources to get leads. Probably the biggest player is Zoom Info. It's expensive. One that we use, and I'm not, I mean, I have no vested interest in kind of mentioning any names, including reply.io. It's just my own experience. Uplead, it's right there on this slide. That's what we're currently using. There's, Hoover's. I mean, there's plenty of places that you can that are web-based, right? That are cloud-based, and their pricing models vary. There's usually a package. You can get X amount, right? But the ones like Zoom Info and Uplead, the other nice thing they do is before you download any, and you actually kind of pay for each one you download, but you can decide if you want, you can look through them before you download them. Before you download the ones that you want, I don't know how it works. I'm not a technical guy, but they actually send emails out to all of the ones that you're downloading to see if there's still good emails. So if they get bounced back, like, oh, this person's not here anymore, well, you won't download that one, right? Yeah, there's another one I'm trying out. They claim, to use AI and have mobile phone numbers, and they scour the internet, LinkedIn, and Facebook.
Yeah, AI, for those of you that might not be familiar, artificial intelligence. So they're picking up somebody's cell phone number based on their activity, similar to last night. I was on Words with Friends, and I had looked at Joseph A. Banks to look for, sport jackets and shirts getting ready for post-COVID. I'm on Words with Friends, which is Scrabble, and Joseph A. Banks ads start to break through.
It's crazy.
I mean, it was just like the two had nothing to do with each other, but it was coming to me because of AI. Yeah.
So this other resource kind of uses that approach to get mobile phone numbers and stuff. But it's a numbers game. It is a numbers game. The key thing and the way to start is, do a really good job of identifying who your ideal customer profile is. If I'm an electrician, I'm not going to promote my services to people who have plumbing problems. That's kind of the point there. And then it's like, if you're going into other companies, what are the job titles? And these things like Uplead and Hoover's, you can kind of fine tune that search based on, So they're out there. But I would tell you, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, unbelievable tool. It's not cheap either, but that's just an unbelievable resource of contacts that you can find. It gets pretty granular, regions, job titles, but also when's the last time they, changed jobs, that sort of thing. So, just think about who typically buys your product or service. What do they look like? What do they sound like? What are the typical problems they have? What are the typical issues? I mean, just get a good framework of you're hunting, right? So what's that?
Before we go to a break, Alex, do you want to show the toaster before we go to a break, and then we'll take our first break for the day, or you want to do it coming out of the break?
I'll share. I just need access to, for some reason I'm locked out of it, just let me know when I can.
Okay.
So I'm going to
stop sharing.
Let me know on there. Okay. So I wanted to share this with everybody. This is a continuation of what we do is for cadence. So this is the part we talk about the gym. So for everybody, it's different. Mark involved a lot of calls and emails. If you're very local, there is some networking. There's face-to-face, there's events, there's prospecting, there's associations, there's all this other stuff that goes into prospecting 101. So the heavy hitters are calls and emails. And then there, depending on the organization, depending if you're in the trades, depending if you're in fintech and you have associations or, you know, PAC conferences or whatever. So let me show you, this is an algorithm. And if you don't have it, some of the students have it. I'll be happy to share this. Just raise your hand afterwards saying, hey, I want this. This is for you. This is not for the managers. This is not for the CEO. This is a tool for holding yourself accountable to how to use the gym. So these are just your own columns. So, you know, I'm a student as well, so I use it for myself. And I've developed the habits, and this is to develop your habits. And once you memorize it, you don't need it anymore. Setting appointments, this is an algorithm to score you of how many you do in a day. Each one follows another. So what I'm saying is each area will create new opportunities for every box. So of course, setting an appointment is one of the goals, but how many do you have to do for success? So you put in, if you look at line 11, a weekly goal, 8. You got 8 to do, and all these goals are in yellow at the bottom. How many first contacts? You meet somebody in an event, first contact. You have your first call, first contact. How many do you have of those? Is that important to you? Absolutely, because you can't just bump around and call the same people over time, people that take your call that will never buy from you. This stays you away from it. So remember, high value activities is how we do prospecting, not people that could repeatedly take your calls. Networking events, one per, see, I only did one this week, and there was 3 I was measuring myself on. So my score is on row 13, 33%. So this is just telling you what your activity, it's hard to see it in your CRM. It's really hard to see this to where am I doing well in my prospecting and where am I not doing well in my prospecting. How many meetings you had in a week? I only had 3 out of 5, but I seemed to be doing well in the sales phone call. I did 6 phone calls rather than 5. And sales phone calls are different than meetings, right? You see the difference between a meeting and a sales phone call, right? And then and this is pre-COVID type environment. You might have to see this. We talk about referrals. This is important. We teach you how to give referrals and receive referrals. And if you're not using that area, it's like using you look at a piece of equipment in the gym going, that looks complicated. I'm not going to use it. And next thing you know, you're in the gym and you don't use that piece of equipment. This will help you to understand, use that piece of equipment. It'll make you healthy. You'll lose weight. You'll burn calories. Referrals are key. Keep doing down. Keeping the love alive. We haven't really driven too much on that. That is really when you have somebody that didn't say yes, you didn't have somebody that said no, but they told you about later. They told you about future. So you think you're going to spit into marketing. But if you spit into marketing and you don't keep in touch with them, then that's your own doing. Keep the love alive means there's a way to communicate with them. Here's an article. Here's something of a resource for you. I'm inviting you to our podcast. I want you to introduce you to Joe. Keep the love alive with those that never said no or never even said yes. They're in the middle. There's a ton of them. This is relatively new for us. This is one of the gold mines we found. This is about 3 years new to us where nobody was hitting this hard. So because then they'll turn into opportunities later. Some of you do speaking gigs. I know Justin does a lot of those as well. How many times are you giving yourself at bat for speaking gigs to talk about your industry, to talk about your business, get in front of people to do that? Reverse timeline, that's part of our success for guest-free selling. If you get a reverse timeline, that means that they're on point for being a prospect. So that means you qualified them to say, we're going to make our decision in March. We're going to make our decision in December. That means they're a qualified prospect. So you're scoring yourself and get a decision a week. 1 a week, get a decision. And if you can see at the top on the left-hand side, 62.5% is a good score. If you score above 70%, your numbers are too high. That means you're inflating your numbers. So challenge yourself. We'd be happy to share this, but I hope people understand it's really hard with a CRM to measure where you're doing great. And if your leads are coming from networking events and you're seeing that, then double down on your networking events more than the other area. So that's what I'm saying about this tool. And if you need anything, put it in the chat box. I'll put this copy in the chat box later in the training. So Mark, thank you so much for coming. This is going to be really important for all of us. We learned a lot as well, and I'm sure we'll see you soon for another one of our rounds together. So thanks so much, Tony. I'll give it back.
You're welcome.